Welcome to Amish Roots. Thank you for joining me. Growing up in a large family can be a blessing because you have lots of other kids to play with. On the other hand, if you're one of the younger ones like I was, it can be a hassle because you have older siblings bossing you around. I was not someone who learned things quickly. Part of the reason was that anything that didn't involve reading a good book or playing games didn't really interest me. The other reason was that I was afraid to try new things. When you hear about the Amish children that learn to work hard at an early age, you aren't hearing about me. Now, mind you, I always did the chores I was asked to do, but I certainly never requested more, and I accomplished them as quickly as possible if I was promised playtime when I was done. Which brings me to the summer I was 6 and anxiously waiting to start school in the fall. In late August, I remember my older sisters asking if I knew how to tie my shoes, since this was something I needed to do on my own to start school. Ever the procrastinator, I didn't think it was something I needed to learn during the summer because I was running around barefoot most of the time. But now that crunch time arrived in the last couple of weeks in August, I was threatened by my siblings that I would need to stay home if I couldn't do it. After a lot of trial and error and frustration from those trying to teach me, that September morning found me with my brand new running shoes all tied up, even if it was a bit sloppy, and I was happily waiting to walk out the door. This story sums up my life when I'm faced with new challenges. I put it off until I absolutely need to. It happened when I was at my aunt's house. She was a more modern Mennonite and had a phone. When I was at her house and the phone rang, I was always fascinated that she could talk to somebody simply by picking up the black receiver with the twisted black cord from its place on the wall. Even though she encouraged me at times to try the phone to see how it worked, I was too scared. Well, one day I was at her place and the phone rang, but my aunt was busy, so she told me to answer. Oh, yikes! I was so nervous when I put it to my ear that I didn't say anything. My aunt had to prompt me to say hello. And when the other person spoke, it startled me so much I almost dropped the phone. Now I happily chat for hours. My husband has asked me on a number of occasions, how do you have so much to say? His idea of a phone call is to say, hello, uh huh, uh huh, just a minute, I'll hand you over to Ruth. When I started my first job, it required me to cook, clean, and do laundry for an older English gentleman. This meant that I needed to learn how to use an electric stove, run a vacuum, and manage the washer and dryer. Talk about being overwhelmed. Well, lucky for me, even though the gentleman I worked for did not know how to put a meal together, thought the house cleaned itself, and wondered why you couldn't just wear the same clothes all the time. He did know how the machines in his house operated, so if I ran into issues, he could usually guide me through it. For some reason, as I worked for the English, two things that this Amish girl picked up quickly were how to navigate the TV and the radio. Hmm, interesting. In fact, I recall a trip I took with some non Amish friends to a cottage one year. They decided their idea of roughing it was to take along a VCR so that we could watch movies in case the weather wasn't cooperative. The cottage we rented had a TV but not a VCR. When we stopped to pick up the friend who had the VCR, no one knew how to disconnect it so that we could take it with us. After several attempts by my friends and much discussion, I decided, how hard can this be? And proceeded to climb behind the TV and with minimal effort unhooked a few cords and voila! However, when we got to the cottage, we now had to hook it up. Some of them were engaged with this task while the rest of us began to unpack. It soon became apparent that Amish Ruth had to come to the rescue once again. We have laughed about this for years. Life does not stand still, and when computers became the new fad, I was not interested at all. I was content to visit or phone someone. I didn't need email. And what was on a computer that I could not discover in the encyclopedia? When I left the Amish, I soon realized that computers were the way of the future, and I ended up taking a computer course. And here I am, tapping away at the keys. My husband and I resisted cell phones until a year ago. We finally relented because as we get older, it is a nice thing to have when traveling the roads, in case we run into issues. I still balk at having it with me constantly. Who needs to know where I am 24/7? Sometimes I want to be left alone. So far, I also mute it when I am in stores and definitely when I'm in church. So, has technology made my life better? Well, the vacuum is a great thing to have if you have carpets, but as more and more people are living in houses without them, is it better than a broom? A broom is lighter to handle and easier to grab for quick cleanups. Electric stoves, fridges, washers, and dryers are really nice and make my life easier. No more hauling in wood for the cook stove or making sure perishables are kept in the cool basement. It's also great not to carry water for the wringer washing machine and spending an hour doing loads of laundry. The dryer is a handy machine, but I will admit I did not have one until a year ago. I still like putting the laundry on the line when the weather permits it. I do enjoy some programming on TV, but I seldom listen to the radio. My computer and cell phone are smarter than me, or smarter than I ever will be, and I will probably never use or learn all the features they offer. Because even though I use both of them for communication and research, there are times when they frustrate me greatly. Although I will never catch up to technology and how it works because of all the new advances and changes, I like the convenience of some of it. I am proud of myself for learning as much as I have for someone who grew up without hydro until she was 30. And even if I'm always two steps behind in the tech world, I am especially thankful that my early lesson in having to master shoelaces is something I overcame. Even though we had a short stint where Velcro replaced laces, it was only a fad. So, learning to tie was a good thing. And at my advanced age, I am pleased to report that I could still bend over and tie my shoes. And that hasn't changed. Well, mach's gut, and see you next week on Amish Roots, plain talk in a modern world.